Okay, I think we're live now. Let me just check. Yep, okay, we'll start the meeting then. Thank you all for coming. If I can just remind everyone to keep themselves muted until they want to speak. If you do want to speak, if you can signal by using the raise hand feature or just waving your arms fanatically, hopefully I'll spot you. This meeting is being live streamed onto YouTube. There are members of the public watching. If those members of the public would like to ask a question in the public question time, they can put their questions in on the live chat now and we will pick them up later. If there's any public questions put in during the meeting after public question time, we might have time at the end of the meeting to come back to them then, but we'll see about that. So first item is apologies for absence.
Matt Whittingham and Mike Pierce.
Thanks, Joe. Item 2 then, declarations of interest. Does anyone here have any declarations of interest to declare? Nope. Okay. Item 3, open forum. Joe, have you got any questions coming through the email?
None at all.
That's fine. There's no questions in the live stream chat. So we'll move on. Item 4 then, minutes of the last meeting. Is everyone happy they are a true and correct record? Anyone not happy with that?
Move them as a correct record.
Thank you, Councillor Whip.
Yeah, I have my hand raised.
Oh, Councillor Hartley, go ahead.
Hello.
Yep, go ahead.
I wasn't at the meeting. It's a spelling mistake on page 2, the very top of the page, where it says setting of the present, not precept. Very top of the page, item D, heading,
Oh yeah,
setting of the present.
yeah.
All correct.
Sure.
That's all, Chair. Thank you.
That's great. Are you seconding the minutes with that amendment, Ken?
Yes, I am, Chair.
That's brilliant. Thank you. Everyone happy with that? Nods all around. Anyone?
Tom, second them. Does he not have to have been there?
Might have been. Okay. Someone else?
I thought if you said they were accurate, I thought, yeah.
Okay. Mick seconded them. Thank you, Mick. Okay. Item 5 then, finance. To confirm approval of payments made by the town clerk to the council since the last meeting of the council, and to delegate consent for payments to be made prior to the next meeting of the council. Jane?
Thank you, Chairman. I can do both of those things. Propose approval of the payments and consent.
That's great, thank you. Ken, have you got your hand up?
Sorry.
You're muted. You're muted again.
I'm prepared to second them en bloc.
That's brilliant, thank you. Is everyone happy with that? Nod or put your thumb up, or yeah. Anyone not happy with that? Nope, that's great, thank you. We'll move on then to item 6, policy for memorial benches. Ken, I'm assuming that's an old hand. You're muted again.
Oh my God, not with it this evening. I'm blaming the COVID jab on this. I'll tell you. Chair, I know that there is a reflection looking at this policy. in the introduction, where it says donated memorial benches can be placed in council-owned parks and open spaces within the ward, I would personally like to see an exclusion of the town square block. In other words, you know, the town centre itself, from the east side of Fernley Avenue, the north side of Raynall Road, the west side of Newtown, and the south side of Station Road. In other words, that centre block, which also, you know, it does leave open, if you like, the installation of benches in the gardened areas of Fernley Avenue. It's just, you know, being a wee bit pedantic, but I think just for future clarity as a policy, we ought to exclude that centre block area. It does go on to say, in fact, on the very last page, I think, that the council can refuse to install in any area, but save anybody reading through all this lot and getting to the end before they realise that their original thoughts were the town square or immediate area are excluded. It's just a comment. Other than that, I'm quite happy with the proposals as laid out there. Seems eminently sensible to me. And obviously at some stage we're going to get some figures for the costs inserted into the document as written, but as a policy, I think it's a well put together policy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ken. Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Chair. I came at it from a slightly different perspective than Ken, in that I thought that we could have a category which is where people just have a plaque installed on an existing bench, and you know, they make a financial contribution towards the future maintenance of that bench, and in which case, you know, it's the benches that we currently have or install in the future. And in those circumstances, I mean, I don't know really whether the you know, any particular areas would necessarily be off limits, but I've really struggled trying to think about the costs. I mean, this arose because we had an inquiry. I had an inquiry which I was passing on to Joe for somebody wanting to sponsor a memorial bench. As it happened, it turned out they wanted to do it in South Park, so I passed them on to Pendle, and Pendle explained you know, what the process was and what the financial costs would be. And Joe and I had a very brief conversation about, well, you know, perhaps we should have our own policy in place, and if we do get future approaches, we've got something that's there. So I got as far as thinking about the costs of putting benches in, and I know, you know, to purchase and install a bench in a brand new location, you know, with a concrete pad, it's not an insignificant amount of money. And then, unfortunately, they do need treatment quite regularly. You know, it might be as much as once a year, and that comes at a cost as well. So if it's a new bench in a fresh location, and it isn't replacing an old bench or in an existing location, the 10-year cost of putting the bench in the first place and looking after it for that period it is not insubstantial, and you'd probably be looking at say £1,000 as being a reasonable figure. I know Canal and Rivers Trust, they their costs are like £2,000 and upwards, so they're quite a lot more. I forgot what the Pendle Council figure was, but within the report that all the costs are left blank. So we need to think about that, and given that I haven't done any further research on it, I wondered whether we could, if we agree with the principle of the policy, that we have further discussions and investigations about the price tag applied to this. But coming back to Ken's point, I wonder if we have a fee for attaching a plaque to an existing bench, and whether that should include the same exclusion clauses. There was another point about replacement benches in existing locations and contribution to that, and I think if we do agree to have a further look at the costs involved, that's something that we could pick up as part of that consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, David. Okay, so we've got a proposal from Ken to say yes, but with an exclusion of the town centre area. Ken, are you happy with David's suggestion there? Add that into your original proposal. Is it?
Sorry, Chair. Yes, yeah, I'm quite happy. The entire principle. It's just that I still do feel quite strongly about the town centre area.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Chris, I'll let you come in now.
Thank you. Yeah, could I just ask a little bit more about the problem with the town square? It would seem to me a natural function of a social square like that to have good sitting down space. If there are any real problems, I will gladly listen to them, but I would like to make that point.
I've lost Zoom.
You're still here. Chairman, whilst you're recovering your Zoom, there you go. Just in response to Chris there, the Town Council has had a series of requests for memorials of one sort or another on the town square. And the first of which was for Gale's Bench, which was agreed quite a while ago and put in place. And I don't think anybody at the time realised that the drawing that we'd seen of it, it really was larger than life. And we ended up with a bench that was rather too high to be comfortable, and it was we did have some small amount of criticism from people who have used it, but said, well, they couldn't really because it wasn't appropriate, and ultimately the town council with Pendle Council took the decision to, during the current refurbishment, to relocate Gales Bench and for it to be in an appropriate memorial position, but not on the town square. And then we had other requests for memorials that the town council weren't too keen on, and so we came to the view that we generally wouldn't have those memorials on the square. The only exception to that is that a former member of the town council, he passed away, it's James Wilson, and because of his other work, the police charity that he worked with wanted to commemorate him, and his widow Judith approached the town council to see whether that charity could sponsor a floral feature, which the town council did agree to, with a plaque. So I think the general policy has been established. We don't want memorials on the town square, and you know, people have talked about statues and things like that. I think with the benches, you know, I'm ambivalent really. I mean, I think if, you know, we're just putting a plaque on an existing bench, I would be okay with that. I think Ken's a bit more reticent, but that's the background to the memorials on the town square per se. So I mean, I think you know, it's not wanting to end up with a whole host of different memorials that, you know, would be overbearing given the scale of the square, really.
Tom,
Chris, do you want to come back in? Go ahead.
Can I just come back on that a little bit? I was thinking more from the perspective of actual seating provision, with the memorial aspect second. What will there be in the way of seating in the square if there are no memorials?
There'll be 12 benches as there were previously, and in fact the benches will be of the same design but new, and the old benches are being refurbished so that we can use them elsewhere in the town. We were hoping to reuse all well, at least some of the timber, but you know, having spent ages dismantling them, the intrepid duo of the chairman and myself came to the view that we were wasting his time trying to salvage them. So we're going to get new timber for the existing bench ends, and they'll be used to be put in new locations or to replace benches that are beyond reasonable repair, roadside benches and the like elsewhere in the town.
Thank you. I'll concede on that one then. That's fine.
Thanks, Chris. Jane, I'll let you come in.
Thank you, Jan. Again,
I said Jane, Ken. Sorry.
Sorry.
I'll just let Jane come in first before you come back.
Thank you, Chairman. Just thinking about the possibility of putting plaques on benches. Would it be, for example, one plaque per bench, or would there be multiple? You know, have we got any sort of things? If we've got lots of people, you know, wanting to put a memorial for someone, you know, is it likely to is it just one plaque per bench? Any thoughts on that?
I'd say one. I don't think we'll have that.
I suppose
And if I'm honest,
I suppose that depends if someone wants to share a bench. Yeah. Ken, I'll let you come back in now if you like.
Thank you, Chair. It purely was a protection issue from my point of view, to save future councils, future members of councils, if we had that clear exclusion, which is a relatively small area in the town, and there are bags more benches elsewhere spread around the parks and the countrysides. It is a very public place, and it's just something in my mind that sort of suggests that that area could well be kept free of memorials. We can put as many words down as we like. It will not stop people putting flowers adjacent to them or decorating around the memorial or whatever. In the odd instances where it occurs, it's relatively easy, as the policy says, for the council to remove them. It would be nice to think, if you like, that the brand new square will remain brand new and pristine for many years to come, rather than inviting people to do their own thing, as it were, within the square. It's purely a protection issue. I'm gracious to Chris for conceding his point and accept the decision of the group. I just feel that it would be nice to see that pristine new square stay pristine, and we shouldn't encourage people to modify it. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Ken. Okay. Well, we've got a proposal under, and it's seconded there. Jane, is that an old hand? Yeah. Okay. Are people okay with that that way forward then? Is anyone disagreeing with that way forward? Nope. Okay. That's passed then. Item
Tom,
7.
We're excluding the square. Are we excluding the square?
Yeah, that was Ken's proposal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Item 7, land at Greenwood Field. To discuss and agree future use of this land. Now, I think Councillor Whip is going to share some pictures with us. You are muted.
Great. I'll have to root round to find my pictures now as well. Right, I think you should have a picture of a field with a barbed wire in front and a tree in the middle, which is on Greenfield Lane. And I asked for this to go on the agenda because we've had some previous discussion about this land. We've discussed various options, and I don't think we're going to make a decision tonight about what it could be used for in the future. And I think it would need to have wider consultation and discussion across the town, really. But the history is this field, which is known as the Horse Field, was part of West Close Farm and purchased by Pendle Council, I don't know, soon after Pendle Council came into existence, I think. Part of the farmland was incorporated into Victory Park, and the farm and barn were both sold off, I assume, around the same time. The field, which runs alongside Greenby Field and lays between the Greenby Field Lane and Victory Park and the sewage works and the land immediately next to Gisborne Road, was let out on a 364-day grazing licence. United Utilities, I don't know, 20 years ago, I can't really put a date on it, asked for permission to put a whole road parallel with Greenby Field Lane when they were doing some construction work at the wastewater treatment plant, and subsequently Pendle Council took that whole road on and surfaced it and created a new access to the north of Victory Park and provided a car park which serves Barnoldswick town and the allotments that are there. A couple of years ago, the people who own the land immediately next to Gisborne Road, at the junction of Greenby Field Lane and Gisborne Road, they'd got planning consent for housing development from a government inspector, and they asked Pendle Council if they could purchase this field from Pendle Council with a view to extending their development. Well, extend the development's a bit inappropriate. I mean, it had met the development about 4 or 5 times as big as it is. And at that point, the town council said, "Well, no, we don't want this." And we asked Pendle Council to do a community asset transfer of the land, and the town council, which by that point had had a community asset transfer of Victory Park, would incorporate it into the Victory Park land holding. But for the time being, I'm getting ahead of myself. And Pendle Council agreed to that, so they transferred the land. I don't know, 18 months ago, or something like that. And it's still licensed for use on a grazing licenses. There's actually 2 licenses, one for the horse field, and then there's another license which is for a much smaller section of land immediately adjacent to the land that has planning permission for housing. But it's this bigger plot of land. Now then, over the years, the town council have considered using at least part of the land for allotments. When that was first discussed, and we were looking at some land that had been fenced off from the main horse field and is actually next to the car park down at the bottom end. And I wonder whether I can just move these pictures on, really. I think that shows the area of land at the bottom. So the town council thought, oh, well, we'll make this into allotments, only to find that this footpath that goes up there is described on the definitive map as being 24 feet wide, which rather scuppered the plans to create an allotment with a footpath through it. And so that didn't really progress. However, the town council still has the aspiration for using part of it for allotments. The other things that have been discussed are, could it be used for a pump track, so that you get a BMX style track, which could be used by BMX bikers and the like. We've also talked about planting trees on part of it, and I mean the pump track could be combined with planting trees as creating quite a good feature, together with having some allotments there as well. So those are three things, and then of course there's its existing use as a horse field. And the thing that prompted me to ask for this to go on the agenda tonight is that another landowner in the area has inquired when the grazing license comes up, and whether he could tender for the grazing license, or to rent the field, presumably for livestock. So there's quite a lot of possibilities, but there's no certainties. And my view is that as a town council, we need to carefully consider the different options, come to a view about what we want to do in the long term, whether we just want to leave it as a field, use part of it for allotments, etc., 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 or if we've got bigger aspirations, to actually crystallise what they are, and then get on with bringing them into existence. A fly in the ointment is the footpath, because the definitive map, I mean, despite the fact that it's just a footpath and it's a narrow strip, the definitive map is the definitive map. And if the definitive map says it's 24 foot wide, it's 24 foot wide. So you can't really interfere with that. And if you do, you're obstructing a public right of way, and you can get prosecuted for it. Given the development of the alternative routes, part of which those which we've created through Victory Park and out of Victory Park and coming along, if this cat will allow me to use my cursor, the cat is now licking my hand. So along here, there is a new route that we've created, which goes right up to the end of Blakely Crescent.
I don't think you're sharing the right thing here. We're just seeing the same picture from the first time.
Oh,
so
sorry.
You're pointing with your mouse, and there's...
Okay, right. Right, we'll see whether I can get the right one. Okay, so have you seen a different picture now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, thank you. Yeah, so in the last dozen years or so, we've created a route that comes from the end of Blakely Crescent through Victory Park and then out of Victory Park and along here, which then joins on with this route over there. That route over there goes around the other side of West Close Farm and Barn. In fact, actually on the definitive map, it goes through part of the development. Hello. Oh, for goodness sake, cat. Right. I'm sorry, this cat is just causing mayhem here. So given the layout, and people would need to look at this on a map really to appreciate what I'm saying, it would be perfectly possible to divert the footpath on the different routes that we've created, and that would not disadvantage anybody from being able to get from A to B. It would just be via a different route. But I would need to show you that on a map to justify what I'm saying. So all I want to do is start a discussion going. I'll take this off now. Not to come to any conclusion, but to start having a dialogue about the uses that it could be put to, whether in the short term we continue to let it out on a grazing license, and if we determine that we should let it out on a grazing license, the procedure for advertising that and inviting people to submit a tender for its use. Given that it's a 364-day license, you don't get a tenancy agreement or anything like that. You get that use for 1 day short of a year, and then your expectation is that you come off and the license goes up for reconsideration. Or if we decide to do something else with it, tree planting or whatever, that then sort of takes precedence and the grazing license use ceases. So, sorry to drone on.
Thank you for that explanation. Ken, you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I second the sort of general proposal that we do have a serious look at this piece of land with a view to determining its longer term future. As you can tell from the original photograph that David put up there, it's extremely poor quality grazing now. The land has deteriorated consistently year on year due to lack of grazing maintenance. In other words, it's had livestock in it, horses per se, who are quite selective in what they eat, and the non-edible part of that grazing land has expanded to an extent where it is now extremely rough grazing. It's very, very poor quality land indeed, and that's purely lack of management. Normally a farmer, even for grazing, would patrol that land frequently and stub the thistles and the strong perennial weeds that grow in it. As you can tell from the length of the grass there, it is deteriorating quite badly, and it needs something doing with it. Even to maintain it as decent quality grazing land, it's going to need a lot of work on it. And I think that as council and as the landowners, we do seriously need to consider its longer term future. I'm easy either way, whether it continues as grazing, but if it does continue as grazing, it does need managing, not just leaving. It's rapidly losing its value as grazing land. I have no strong views either way in terms of the alternatives that David has outlined there, in terms of either a pump track, tree planting, allotments, or a combination of one or all of them. But I do think that we do seriously need to take a good hard look at it and decide. The one question that I have is, when does the grazing license expire? Please. And how long have we got? What kind of urgent priority do we need to put on it? Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you, Ken. I've got Mick and then Chris. Mick?
Yeah, pretty much echoing what Ken says. Just for clarity for myself and hopefully for the rest of the council, would it be possible to get a look at a map so that it shows the actual size that we're looking at? From the photos are great, but kind of an aerial map with the footpath on, etc., to look at the actual sizes. And I suppose it's 1 hectare. Is that what it is?
It's split between over two sides of the road. 0.2s on this side and 0.8s on that side.
Right. So it's kind of a small. So it's a small and large sort of piece of land, then, isn't it?
Yeah.
And the other bit was, what sort of revenue would allotments bring against grazing versus investment that the council would have to sort of put in. If we could sort of outline those sort of questions first, it gives us a better idea as to where we're going. Like Mr. Hartley says, I've no preference either way. My preference probably will be able to see all things being done, but again, we need to see exactly how big that land is to see what it would realise. Thank you.
Tom, do you want to answer that one?
No.
It's currently bringing in £618 a year.
Okay.
I've looked at a similar size development. It's called Pudding Mill, if anyone wants to have a look. And they created 50 plots from a hectare. And on current rental of that land, because there's a water supply already to it, we would charge £48 a plot, which would bring us in £2,400 a year.
That's great.
Not how much it
We
costs.
won't be able to have allotments on the footpath. So I think
Unless
it's still
we move
reduced.
the path, Tom.
Yeah, but then what's the cost of diverting a footpath?
I don't know, but your dad's already, David's already talking about doing that. So whatever we do, the footpath would need moving, unless you leave it as it is.
Chairman, I mean, just to come in, and I've put the satellite view up. So the boundary of the land is up to Greenbyfield Lane, so it includes this strip here, which, some trees in and quite a bit of vegetation, and that's the topsoil that was taken off when the whole road was put in. The boundary then comes down here, includes those trees, some of which are well, they're not in the best of health. They're actually the dead stumps, and there's a question mark about those. And if this land here is developed, which it's got planning permission for, I think there's some doubt as to whether those dead stumps could be left, because if they're close to where people are, they would be dangerous. Whereas at the moment they're just in the middle of a field, so there isn't a risk. The footpaths, I mean, the entirety of the land, that's the boundary for West Close farm and barn. But the entirety of the land, and this is already, this section here with the allotments is already in the ownership of the town council. But the footpaths comes off the end of Westfield Road. Well, there's a footpath that comes up here, and then it goes up the track there, and then there's another one, and I can't be exactly precise where it goes, but it's actually been obstructed by some of this, I don't know exactly what, and the actual path on the ground comes off here and then heads up, and you can just see the line there where it comes down onto Greenbyfield Lane. It should come in there, but everybody uses that bit. So you know, if people came from this direction and they wanted, if they said, well, I want to go down there and then across there, they could go that way. And if they came in this direction and they wanted to go that way, they could come through the park and come along this track here. So there's two alternative routes already in existence, which would remove the necessity for having the footpath. But you couldn't really do anything pump track wise or allotments wise with the footpath there, because it would be too much of a conflict. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's
Great,
really helpful. Thanks, David. Thank you.
Chris, I'll let you come in now.
Thank you. Yeah, In general, I'm in favour of both allotments and trees, or indeed a mixture of the two. I think, considering what Ken has said about the condition of the land, that's an extra benefit of allotments, because tenants would come in and improve that condition for their own use. If, as Joe says, there is some revenue from it, that's just another little bonus. But we've seen the waiting list that we have for allotments as it stands. These people are going to be too old to dig by the time they get one. So the more allotments we have, the better. And I'm entirely in favour of that.
Jane, is that a new hand? Yeah.
Thank you, Chairman. I was trying to follow what David was talking about regarding the little footpaths and things going round, and it struck me, I didn't quite catch the road leading down from the farm. Is that public access or is it a private access?
Chairman, sorry, I might putting that back up on screen. Chairman, there's a public footpath runs along here.
All right.
I don't think I can layer this map. There's a public footpath runs on there.
Okay.
And it comes down. You can just see it here. But the route that goes over the field is obstructed somewhere in here. You know, and it's not possible to remove the obstruction because it's a, you know, substantial building. And so the route on the ground takes off from there and winds its way over to that point.
David, 1 second. I'll just I'll share the footpath map.
Okay, I'll take that off.
There. So you can see the path through the park there. That's the barn and the house. And this red dotted line is the footpath, which comes up and round and back down there. But it doesn't show on here the width, which is unfortunate. Everyone okay?
So, Chairman, can I just come back to that? So, the footpath leading down from the farm, not the one that you've highlighted in red there, but actually that separates that piece of land.
The access track.
Is that the access track? Is that access available for people with cars as well as being a footpath or not? No.
Yes. It's a road.
It's a private access to the properties, but it's also a public footpath.
It's
so
ours.
the public can't drive on it. I mean, they technically could, but they don't have permissible use to drive motorised vehicles on it.
Why I'm asking is, the bottom side of that is that smaller piece of land. Is it where there's hen huts and things on it? And I was wondering whether that smaller piece of land could be utilised for allotments, and then they could have access by walking down or driving down that track from the farm. And then so you could have that, because there's that bottom little strip, isn't there? And then you could have kind of multiple uses then. The top bit, the larger section, you could use for some sort of eco project, such as trees, wildflowers, anything like that. I don't know whether it would be big enough, that smaller section, to actually how many allotments you could get. It's just another way of thinking about it, that was all. Thank you.
Okay, Mick, is that a new hand?
Sorry, I've removed it.
Cheers. Ken, is that a new hand?
Yes, it is. It's just another little part of the history. If I remember rightly, in the none too distant past, Barnoldswick in Bloom installed. Can you leave the map where it is? Barnoldswick in Bloom installed whips of the plant variety down this Hall Road, as David called it, along the boundary of the Hall Road there, which were promptly enjoyed by the horses that lived in the field. And so, having gone to the extent of planting whips along the full extent of that boundary there, the horses sort of reached over the fence and nibbled them away, which is an indication, if you like, that they preferred young trees to the grass that was in the field. It just reinforces the point that the grazing on that land is pretty poor and does need looking at. I really think that we do need a good long look, a report with the alternatives and the costs, bringing to a future council meeting on the uses of that land, and would welcome the views of any councillor who wants to go down there and have a look and think about some of the problems that we've highlighted this evening. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Ken. Anyone else like to come in? Callum, you haven't come in. John, Jodie, or Emma? Nope.
No, I think we, like Ken said, I think we need to have a proper proposal that we can consider the alternatives.
It's just a bit too pie in the sky at the moment, so getting some good ideas like allotments and things, yeah, but we need a bit more information.
Do we try and get the path extinguished? Because whatever happens, if you want to use it for anything other than what it's currently being used for, it's useless.
Yeah.
Not useless, that's the wrong way of putting it. But even if you want to put a pump track in there, you're still going to have to maintain a 24-foot pathway. Wide enough for a wagon. Because that's what
there is access all the way around that area that can be used quite easily. So I think applying for moving the footpath is a really good idea because it frees up more land for allotments and planting and things like that. It certainly broadens the options that we have for that land.
Okay. David, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, that we ought to explore the possibility of perhaps diverting the footpath onto the new routes that we've created. I know people are very, very sensitive about losing any public rights of way, so it isn't a simple procedure. And despite the fact that we might think, well, there's perfectly acceptable alternatives, it could be that all sorts of objections are raised and legitimately raised about diverting the footpath. My suggestion would be that in the first instance, Joe contacts Tom Partridge at Pendle Council, to seek his views on it, and we could outline the sort of diversion routes that would be available to make it all work. I think the thing that needs a decision this evening is in terms of the grazing license. I mean, even if in the fullness of time we wanted to do something with the land other than what it is at the moment, I think it's easily going to be 12 months before we we sort of take that forward, which would mean that it could get another 12 months use as grazing. And if there's more than one person interested in having a grazing license on that bigger area, not the small area with the fowls, then we ought to invite people to put a tender in.
Okay. So the proposal then is to allow the renewal of the grazing license and to come back with more solid proposals to a future meeting.
Chairman, no, I'm proposing that we invite tenders for the grazing license. We don't renew. We put it out. We ask people to make us an offer, and we make we determine who gets the 364-day grazing license on that basis.
Jen, are you seconding that?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I'll second that. Thanks.
Okay. All those in favour, just give us a wave, thumbs up, nod, whatever. Yep, I think that's unanimous. Item 8 then, to consider the council's response to the following, and it's a planning. Well, it's not a planning application. It is, but it's the adjacent field, 15 dwellings. Jane, you've got your hand up first. No, David, I'll let you come in on this then.
Chairman, for the benefit of everybody, I'll share that aerial picture again. So it's this land here. This is quite a recent aerial picture because they already felled these trees. So their boundary goes round here, and the greater part of this land has already got planning permission, and it got planning permission through, two government inspectors who first of all granted outline consent against our wishes, and then granted detailed consent again against our wishes. And the change now is that the new landowners, the new developers, have acquired this land here, which for donkey's years has been used as gardens and been rented to the people who live along Gisborne Road here. So whoever owned that previously has now sold that land to the developers, and the developers have put a new planning application in, which includes that, and it's for a slightly different number of houses. And I have got the plan somewhere, if I can find it. I think it's this one here. So has the plan come up?
Not yet.
Oh.
Has it come up now?
No, I think you're sharing the window instead of the screen, David.
Right, well, I'll stop share then.
You need to click screen 2 or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. Right, have you got it now?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a rather unfortunate shape which we try and ignore, but we did, in comments to the previous application, point out that it was perhaps a little bit inappropriate, but the planning inspector perhaps didn't appreciate what we were trying to say. I don't know. But putting that to one side, this new application, as I say, it takes in this bit of land here and means that the layout is slightly different. The access is exactly the same as before. And then there's a rather unfortunate, in my eyes, arrangement of the footpath, the pavement that comes round here and onto Gisborne Road. And just to unpack that a bit, when United Utilities applied for their whole road, which we mentioned in the last item, a planning requirement of the county council was that they had to provide an improvement in sight lines, which meant that United Utilities acquired, or they needed to provide sight lines and a passing place on Greenbyfield Lane. And UU must have bought this land and they cleared it, and the planning requirement that it would be dedicated for highway use. However, the developers and the landowners here say, well, that's United Utilities land and we can't use it. And despite the fact that we've said till we're blue in the face that that's dedicated as highway, so you could really put a pavement along the frontage there, they don't seem to take us up. And the one big issue, I mean, you know, we can be concerned about the development per se, but to be fair, that's water under a bridge, because the government inspectors have already given planning permission. So, you know, we can't object to the principle of it. You know, it's the details that matter. But if the developers could acquire that bit of land there, they could create a continuous pavement that would go right up into the town centre. Instead, they have this stupid crossing point over Gisborne Road at this crossroads, which isn't the best, on this fast entry into the town where, you know, traffic only slows down when it gets to this narrow bit where all the cars are parked. So, you know, there's lots wrong with this. Unfortunately, government inspectors have approved it, and there's not a lot that we can do with that. The concern about the entrance here was that we've already got this very busy, well, not busy so much, but we've got Greenbyfield Lane there, we've got a whole road access track there, we've got this driveway coming into West Close Farm and Barn, and there's some driveways into the bungalows here, and you're going to introduce yet another entrance onto Greenbyfield Lane, where there's already traffic, you know, turning every which way. But the government inspector said that was perfectly fine. So there's beggar all that we can do about that. However, those are matters that will have to be considered by Pendle Council's area committee, and the town council can come to whatever view it wants on the development and say whatever it likes. Earlier on, I mentioned the trees on the boundary, which you can see. These are trees there which lie within the town council's ownership, and whenever the development comes about, there's some of these which, you know, as the landowner, we will have to address the issues with them. I have got some pictures, but I'm a bit loath to try and share them with you because, like, you know, I'm not being very successful with that.
Well, you did actually share your screen that time, so you would have been okay.
I've been sharing my screen before.
No, you were sharing your window. Anyway, right. Open that up for discussion. Who'd like to make the first comment? seeming as we're not the planning authority, we can basically say whatever we like. Although I'd asked members to be,
Professional.
professional. Yes. Jane, you got your hand up first. Go ahead.
Thank you. Well, Chairman, you give me the authority to say what I'd like. So, how long have you got?
You always have that authority, Jane.
I'll throw you out of the meeting.
Oh,
No, that's your job, Joe, isn't it?
No,
Oh,
I've not got
bloody
long
hell.
control.
So, well, there's quite a few things to think about with this planning application. As Joe knows, we've had a little chat about it already earlier today. So basically, regarding the water runoff, they're saying that they're proposing to put that in a stream southeast of the development. So the water's got to run somewhere, so have all this extra water that's coming off the land that's going to go into this this stream or whatever it is that they want to call it. I've noticed there's no paths for plot 10 and 11. That was something that was mentioned on the last application. Cycle storage, something that's been brought up. That really should be having a lockable storage cycle unit for each. I think they call it a domestic dwelling or something. So all the properties are 4-bedroomed. There's no smaller dwellings, 1 and 2 bedroom. And there is a big issue with parking spaces that highways have raised as well. And I think there's a bit of an issue regarding that with plots 9 to 11, and something looks to really need to be sorted with that. And electric vehicle charging points should be installed as well. So foul sewage to be determined. So how they're going to get rid of that. I don't know if there's anything much else. And recycling, what's the scheme for recycling and from separate waste and things like that. There's quite a lot of things that have not been, look like they've not been decided on from what I can tell from reading all the different reports and things that's come in. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Jen. Ken?
Thank you, Jan. I support entirely what Jane has said about this. It's excuse the expression, the awful design as far as I can see in terms of plan. The one point that disappoints me is that even on a development of this size, the provision of green space seems to have been pushed aside. The two identified green space areas on the plan are right on the peripheries. Don't really sort of encourage the use of green space within it. In other words, it's used as a buffer to the existing countryside. The small green wedge to the bottom right of the plan that David put up, and the little disputed area of the footpath at the top left, adjacent to Greenfield Lane itself. I just think it's a god-awful design that really, certainly from my point of view, it is more contemptuous than attractive. So everything that Jean said, plus everything that Jane said, plus additional comments about the provision of green space within the area, I just think it's really bad planning. Thank you, Chair.
Anyone else wanting to come in? now's your chance. I'd like to add, I think there's not enough provision for new tree planting. They've cut down some really good mature trees, and they've just put down for replacing them in the same number. And I thought, you know, cut one down, plant 3 more kind of thing.
I agree with that, Tom.
Chris, I think yes, the chat is visible when you type. It pops up on the live stream. Right. Anyone else want to make a comment on this planning application? No. Okay. Yeah, David, I think Joe's already included that.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Is everyone happy with all those suggested? Anyone want one striking out? Just to be sure we're all on the same page. Nod your head. Give your thumbs up. Yep. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Go ahead, Joe.
What's the resolution? To object on the
That-
basis of
Everything that we've said tonight. That's our.
right.
We're just putting them all as comments.
Okay.
Yeah. So the inadequate footpath, the trees, everything Jane said and Ken said. Yep. Item 9 then, fencing at football club and cricket club.
So after I put Tom, after I put this item on about to consider the funding, I went back to the minutes of the actual meeting. The minutes actually said that we agreed delegated authority in discussion with councillors on costs. So we've obviously had that conversation last week because we could get on with it a week earlier because you'd already authorised it. So it's just to go through what we actually agreed.
Okay. Do you want to go through the proposal in terms of who's paying for what, just so everyone's aware?
Yeah. I don't know if I've got the figures here, I've just realised. Right, okay, so we had £7,000 left in our grants budget for the year, and we don't have any more full council meetings before year end. So the total cost of the work was just over £9,000. That's getting the fencing from the supplier who supplied the adult football club, so they'll be all consistent quality-wise and everything else, and then getting a local contractor from Barnoldswick to carry out the installation. So we're going to put the £7,000 of grant funding straight into the project, and then football club and the cricket club have both agreed to share their proportion of what's left, and they're both more than happy with that. They were incredibly thankful to the council. Work will be completed before the end of March. It just needs to schedule the contractor, and the fencing company just need 2 weeks notice of when we need them on site, and they're going to deliver them 3 days apart so that we haven't got the volume of it on site at any one point. There you go.
Thanks, Joe. Ken, is that a new hand or is that just a remnant?
Yeah, I'll formally propose that we accept those figures and authorise, the work to go ahead. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I don't think we do need to formally
Note it.
vote on that because we've already given agreement with consultation. Yep. Okay. Last item then, Corus.
In that case, Chair, I'll just record that I'm happy with those figures.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ken.
Item 10 then, correspondence. So this is just for information only. So there's no need to discuss, we just note any reports we've got. So Joe, do you want to go ahead?
So the only item of correspondence I've got to report, you've all been sent earlier this week, which is the letter about the complaint about the election process that we used. So I just need a response from the council on what your thoughts are on each point, please.
I think it was just asking for individual councillors to respond if they wanted to.
Right, nobody has.
So, I mean, we don't need to reply as the council. They're just asking for individual responses if people want to. Okay. I'll just come back to open forum then, because we did get a couple of comments in the live stream chat. Got Rebecca Lewis saying there's some damage that needs immediate attention at the skate park. Joe, I think you can just flag that up with Pendle Council.
Do we know what it is?
Not saying.
What you're not saying, or it's not saying?
It's not. The comment isn't saying. Just says there's immediate damage. Anyway, Angus Brennan asks, if the definitive map shows the footpath through the property, then surely that is obstructive, therefore illegal. That was on the discussion. Ken, you got your hand up.
Apologies. I'm still half asleep, Chair. That's an old hand.
That's okay. David.
Just on the point about the public right-of-way being obstructed, there's all sorts of historic obstructions that have arisen, and I seem to recollect bringing Marjorie into this, that according to the definitive map, she had a footpath, was it a bridleway, going through her house, and I think that was resolved by a footpath diversion, but the house was built on the footpath or whatever, donkeys years ago, and when you start to look into them, there are a few about. I only became aware of it when there was an issue. There's a bit of a culvert under the footpath, and it turned out that beyond where it crosses the stream, the one that we were talking about earlier on, it should go one route, but it goes a different route. So there's still a route on the ground. It's just different to what the definitive map says. I would expect, if there was any application to amend the definitive map so as to allow for diversions, that whoever's household it is that lies on the route of the definitive map route would join us in an application to get it diverted so that everything is regularised. I hope that's a sufficient explanation.
You just said that about the culvert. This new development, and they're saying they're going to go into a stream. Is it that one?
Yeah.
So the stream that's already flooding the football club is going to get more water?
Well, I think the developers would argue no, because that's where you get into sustainable urban drainage schemes, and they are designed to retain water from the hard surfaced areas, so that the runoff from the land is what is called the greenfield runoff rate.
Right.
You may or may not accept this, but the planning inspectors, all the drainage people, and everybody like that, that's what they work off. And so, and we've turned planning applications down on the basis of inadequate drainage, and we've got stung for £20,000 costs for being unreasonable. So in practice, if the land is sodden, the water runs off it into the stream, and if they include a sustainable urban drainage scheme, the water won't run off any faster than it currently does. Right. In sort of those sorts of conditions. But there's two, I think it's two pipes, might only be one, goes under the footpath. The only time that I've seen problem with it flooding at that point is when somebody's plastic garden furniture washed down and obstructed the entrance to the pipes.
Right.
And I fished it out, and then the water could escape. But you know, that's the only occasion when there's been a problem
Thank you.
that I know of, anyway.
Okay. Right. I'll close the meeting there. Thank you all for coming. Thank you anyone at home watching. We've got 14 viewers currently. I think that's great that everyone's interested. Yep. Good night.